Yes, Krish. Well, you've got those flights over the sky, that familiar roar over West London again. We were told earlier in the day that operations wouldn't resume until midnight, so that is some good news. We're also told that 8 British Airways flights are going to be departing in the next few minutes. The chief executive, who's been under a lot of pressure today, did say that his focus was on getting people home, so repatriation, and also relocating those aircraft that are out of place. A full operation is expected tomorrow, so if you are travelling tomorrow, that's good news for you as well. So sighs of relief, but wait, don't fully exhale yet. That's because there was this statement earlier from the British Airways chief exec, which was quite candid, I thought. It said BA had effectively been forced to ground its operations entirely. The airline faces the difficult job of unpicking that mess. Well, that mess continues tonight. Here's how the day unfolded in Hayes, West London, and a warning, there's some flash photography in my report. A huge fireball lights up the night sky. After 10 in the evening, emergency services were first called. They got there 5 minutes later. This footage shared with us was taken right across the road from the sub-power station in West London, where Manpreet Leal and her family watched on from their home. Tell me what happened last night.
We were sleeping in the bed and then we heard an explosion. We heard it's like a car crash. It was that big. And then we woke up and we opened the window and see there's a fire in front of the power station.
The substation that supplies Europe's biggest airport, Heathrow, a couple of miles away. As day breaks, the tall flames and plumes of smoke subside, but the impact still remains. 120 aircraft were forced to divert mid-air this morning. Look at Heathrow's arrival page. A 6 a.m. flight from Nairobi, diverted. Another from Cape Town, Riyadh and Boston all had to land elsewhere. Hundreds and hundreds more cancelled. At least 1,350 flights were supposed to fly in and out of Heathrow today from destinations around the world.
It was, slightly chaotic, as it always is. I think in those situations, everyone's got the same questions. What do I do? Do I take a hotel? When am I going to be told what time my flight's going to go? Should I book another flight? Where's my luggage? And, they just didn't really have any answers.
Attention now turns to how the fire caused so much disruption, leaving passengers, crew and cargo stranded worldwide, and how the backup systems weren't enough to run an airport that's such a critical part of Britain's infrastructure. Heathrow's chief executive, under pressure to explain what went wrong, said the airport is equal to charging up a mid-sized city.
We have 3 of these substations. Each of them has a backup transformer. The backup transformer in this case also went. And then we have to restructure the supply. So we're not out of power, but we have to restructure our power supply. To do that, we have to close down systems.
The government said they will continue talking to Heathrow about how to prevent this happening again.
We will want to look at what are the lessons to be learned from this, why the fire happened, and also whether sufficient resilient systems are in place for an institution like Heathrow.
The Metropolitan Counter-Terrorism Police are investigating as a precaution, along with the London Fire Service. As flights start again, questions still remain tonight over how a single fire managed to take down the UK's biggest airport.
Well, let's talk to Lord Harris now, who chairs the National Preparedness Commission. Were you surprised?
I'm shocked, actually, because I think the reality is that an institution, an organisation, something the scale of Heathrow Airport, has to plan for every eventuality. And what's more, they've got to plan for things going wrong. If this turns out just to have been an accident, it's an accident which could have happened at any time, and they should really have had in place practical arrangements to mean that we didn't see this sort of disruption today.
I mean, if the National Preparedness Commission didn't know that this was possible, did anybody else?
Well, I think my message is actually you have to assume that these things are possible. You have to assume that a cyber attack is going to get through. You have to assume there's going to be some catastrophic accident. What you need to do is prepare and to stress test against the sorts of crises that Heathrow has faced today. And the reality is that Heathrow clearly hadn't done the necessary preparation. They didn't have backup generation facilities available, or if they did, they hadn't recently tested them. They hadn't worked out whether or not they would work, whether or not they could enable the airport to function, or at least parts of the airport to function. Now, that's a failure. It's a failure to plan, it's a failure to prepare, and it's a failure to be properly resilient.
It's a very clear example of just how vulnerable our critical infrastructure is. And it makes you wonder what else could be switched off in such an easy way.
Well, I think that's the other point is that this presents a signal to those who might want to do us harm as to how easy it is, how by targeting a single substation you can have these sorts of devastating effects. So, yes, of course, all our infrastructure is potentially vulnerable. As a nation, we've probably got to be spending much more on prevention, on preparedness, on resilience. If you like, it's basic homeland defence. Defending the nation against hostile action, but more probably simply against things going wrong.
Can you actually, though, plan for every eventuality? I mean, I suppose a defender might say, well, this hasn't happened before, and spending millions or billions or whatever it might cost to prevent it, may not be worth it, given it's a once-in-decades occurrence.
Well, we don't know that it's a once-in-decades occurrence, and we won't really know until all the lessons have been learnt and there's been a possible sort of review as to what exactly happened. However, it's not about preventing every conceivable occurrence. What it's about is preparing for things to happen, things to go wrong. It's like your bank preparing for the fact that they may have an interruption to the internet, or a transport operator preparing for the fact that they may lose their electricity. That's what happened in this case. And most organisations of this scale ought to be thinking about, have we got backup generation? Will that work when we need it, i.e. in an emergency? And will that be sufficient for us to enable our functions to continue? It's standard process. It's a standard process of being prepared and ready for what may come and hit you, and then being resilient to respond quickly in the event of something happening. It's not trying to prevent every single eventuality. It's preparing so that when something happens, you are able to recover quickly, or indeed not to have it affect your key operations.
Toby Harris, Lord Harris, thank you very much.